Hey you guys, so I'm coming to you today to talk about tools that will be beneficial in your comic book or graphic novel creation. Now everyone's gonna feel different about this. So my advice to you is watch this video, take from it what you feel will work best for you in your creation process because everyone's different. You can take it to heart, you can take some of it, part of it, all of it, or just leave it on the dance floor, whatever you want to do. So with that being said, these are just my thoughts, my opinions, my feelings, ideals, and based on my experience, some of the things that are beneficial in helping you create a better graphic novel or comic. So with that being said, let's jump into it. So the first thing that I find beneficial in creating a good graphic novel or comic book is to make sure that you always have pen and paper. Now, some of you are going to want to pause, but don't do that. Don't stop watching. Don't unclick. Don't walk away. Don't unsubscribe. Right? Don't not donate to my paycheck. Just hear me out. On the surface, it seems like some really simple, basic advice. It really does. But the reality is that I find a lot of people, including myself, are really bad about actually doing it. And when I say have pen and paper on hand, I mean, for example, um, I have a small, and they don't, not super big tablets, but little small little notebooks, things like that, little spiral notebooks or a little pad or whatever, pad and paper. I have one beside my bed. I have one in my desk drawer. I have one in my book bag and messenger bags that I carry with me at all times. And I have a bathroom in my bedroom, and I have one on my vanity. Now, the reason why I have all these pads and pens, like I work for like Big Pen and the Papermate Company, is because here's what happens. So, how many times have you woken up in the middle of the night and you go get a drink of water, you go to the bathroom, you do whatever, and a piece of conversation for a character pops into your head, um, a scene, an ideal in general for a comic book pops up, and you think, yes, that's great. Like, when I get up in the morning, I'm going to sit at the computer, I'm going to write that shit down. And then you get up in the morning and it's either completely gone or it's not as vivid as you remember, and you're aware that like you're missing details of it. Well, that's because like you went back to sleep, and so like your brain has like kind of forgotten about all that. And it happens more often than not. So I tell people, make sure you always have access to your own pen and paper. I carry book bags and messenger bags a lot. I work two jobs. I'm a college student, so like I'm constantly moving, right? And so inside my bag, besides changes of clothes, my insulin and fast acting insulin pens and all that good diabetes funness and all that shit that's in there, snacks, whatever is going on in my bag that day, I always make sure that I have pen and paper. And the reason why is because there have been many a time where I have been on the bus, I have been at work on break or what have you, and an idea comes to my mind and I've been caught out there. And sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. The human brain is funny like that, right? So I equate not having a pen and paper or access to it at all times as a writer, creator of a graphic novel or comic book to this. Think about how many times you've been at work all day, right? And you're like, oh, when I get off work, I'm going to go to the store and get bread, eggs, and milk, right? Honey, 4:30, 5 o'clock, 2:15, whatever you get off the clock, right? The gig, your gig's up, and you get on, you get in the car, on the bus, in the Uber, you hoof, whatever you do, and you get to said store, and what should be a 5-minute excursion turns into a 45-minute experiment in terror because you go in and you walk around and you're like, what the hell am I here for? And so you forget, and then what happens is that it's a 45-minute experiment in terror. You get to the counter, you spend $85, and you come out and you still don't have the bread, eggs, and milk. And then when you get all the way home and you start putting the shit up that you really didn't need in the first fucking place, you're like, oh, bread, eggs, and milk. That's why I went to the store. So then you're mad because you got to go back to the store. So yeah, always have a pen and paper with you, and also too because sometimes then that way you don't ever lose an ideal, you don't ever lose a thought, you don't ever lose the flow of a conversation, or whatever it is about your creation process. Step two, or the second thing that I find beneficial in comic book creating is that um, don't get hung up on formatting, right? And don't get me wrong, format does matter. It will eventually matter as you go through the process, especially if you are looking to write and then submit your stories or your scripts to um, publishers. Excuse me, to publishers and things like that. It'll matter. But for the time being, you don't need fancy programs or software. I use Celltext. Celltext is a great program. It's free. It's CELTEX. I'll put the link in the description below. But you can download it for free, and then they have a paid version which gives you more upgraded features. But the cool thing about it is that they actually have a format for comic books. So like what'll happen is that you will write the script out, and then you can click on another tab and it'll show you the format, which is it will have the dialogue on the right side, and then it will have the description on the left. So there's that. Then also you can always do just a basic manual script, which I did for my very first issue of Titans, um, which is that, you know, write it in a screenplay or movie, television script format, which is where you have all the, you put interior, exterior, all this stuff. We'll get into that much later on. I will do an actual video and show you the different formats and explain the finer points of them. But initially what you need to do is not worry about having fancy things. You don't need a fancy computer. Any Janko computer will do, as long as that bitch has a port drive where you can put a flash drive in and save your work. So you have a backup in case your computer crashes, you're good to go. You don't have to have fancy software. Again, you can download Celltext for free, or if you're nifty enough, you can format your Word document. So don't get hung up on that. I think sometimes people get into their heads that there's a certain way they have to do things in order to be seen as credit or to give even themselves legitimacy when it comes to writing, and fuck all that noise. You don't need it. You ain't gotta do all that. Formatting does matter, but it matters much later in the process. Step three, or the third thing that I found to be beneficial, is to build a library, right? Build a library. Now, I don't mean go out and, you know, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on books, because you don't have to. You can go to Half Price Books, any thrift store book, or thrift store or bargain basement book place, other than Half Price Books. You can go there and build your library. But when you build your library, some of the books that I would highly recommend is, first of all, any type of book on how to create a comic book or a magazine, or a graphic novel or a manga, because everyone will have different. And the reason why you should have, in my opinion, a variety of them is because they all have something different to say. Yeah, there's basic points that they all hit that are pretty much the same, but then there are some that are completely different, that and things that one author will think about or they will explore much deeper than another author will, if they thought about it all. So make sure you do that. Second, whatever genre that you're writing, make sure you get plenty of books in that genre for you to read. And not just comic books either, and graphic novels. It's real easy to fall into that trap, but don't just rely on those. Like the graphic, like actual full scale novels, things of that nature. For example, so I feel like I'm explaining this poorly, but hold that thought. Let me get it together. 2 seconds. Okay. So my comic book Titans, right, is a mythological fantasy action um, comic book, right? So one of the things that I have is I have tons of books on mythology, right? Um, Sidebar: the Dummies and Idiot Guides, fantastic books. They break it down in layman's terms. Get them. There you go. Um, but I have books on mythology. I have a bunch of comic books, but then I have things like gaming books and technical books on writing, like technical writing books. And that's another thing too. Like when you're building your library, make sure that you have not only books that cover the genre or genres in which you write, but also like how to create those types of books, technical aspects like books on like how to be a writer, books on screenwriting, books on formatting. Like if you have those things, then you don't, when it gets ready for you to make it polished and nice and neat to share with the world, you already have a reference for that. So basically building your library is about building reference material. And also in your reference material, make sure you have things like music and film. Now, it they don't seem like something you want to have in your library, but you do, and here's why. So as a writer, and I'll talk more about this when it comes to writing, is that you should study how cinematography works, how visual storytelling works. You need to understand how that works. And not just in a non-moving sense, but also in a moving sense as well. Because when you do that, I find that it makes you a better writer, because what happens is that you think about how the scene will look in your head. And sometimes as writers, we don't necessarily always think that, particularly because, you know, there was a time where people didn't write for IP, intellectual property. People didn't write that. Now people go into, particularly I find if you are a comic book or graphic novelist, we tend to go into it with the mindset of like, in case someone ever picks this up, in case someone ever gets interested in doing something with the work in a moving visual medium, it's prepared. Like there's been some sort of precedent set for how it should look. There's some sort of guide. There's some sort of whatever. But you should think about it. And also because too, it helps you understand kind of like the pacing of your story. It helps you understand the pacing of your words in the story. And then that way, when your artist, if you're not the artist yourself, when your artist goes to translate that, they're able to sync it up. It's kind of like when you watch a movie and like their lips are moving to the left and the words are going to the right because the sync is off. Oh, excuse me. Like I ate something last night, and I think it was the burgers. I'm about to get a sip of soda in a second, but actually, I'm going to. You're gonna move with me a little bit. All right. Ain't that some shit? Okay, there's barely anything, but I'm happy. But yeah, like then that way, when your artist gets the script and you go over it with them, they're able to see that. And also, you got to build a relationship with your artist so that then that way they understand your writing. But we'll get to that later. So yeah, the third thing that I think is very important is that you build a library. That you build a body of resource material to go from. And I have everything from, I have the DC and Marvel encyclopedias of character encyclopedias. I have a really wonderful book um, um, about character creation from a psychological standpoint, and it talks about like certain characteristic traits that certain types have, like A type personality, B type personality, schizophrenic, or sociopath, manipulators, caregivers, honest Abe, you name it, like it has it there. And so it's really cool. It helps me kind of even put more detail into um, my characters' motivations and methodologies and things like that. So, again, keep your pen and paper handy at all times. Don't worry about, having the best computer, the best, software, because you don't need all that shit. Build a library. Build a damn library. If again, you don't have to, and always constantly be adding to your library. And also be editing from your library. Sometimes there are books that you have in your library that they don't really serve your purpose. They don't really do anything for. They're not real good reference material. And that's okay. Don't discard it, but like take it out of your main library. And that goes into the fourth thing I found beneficial, which is always in your wherever your writing space is. Always have access to materials that are going to be um, beneficial to you in your writing. Um, on hand. You don't want to have to go downstairs. Like I have so many books, it's ridiculous and not enough space. And so what I do is I switch out books constantly. because I'll be writing for periods of time, and this particular book will speak to me or will be beneficial to helping me write, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't, and I have no need for it, and it's taking up space where another book could, and that's what that's about. And you're always going to have those standbys. There's certain books that are always on tap no matter what, because I always find um, they're always a good um, reference point for me. Wow, couldn't even get that out. So yeah, so there's that. The next thing I want to talk about is your space. You're creating your writing space. So for me, this is the most. What's the matter, Momo? What's the matter, boo? So my dog was sick last week. She's just now getting her shit together, and now she's whining. So I think she's back to her standard. I'm trapped in the room, and I want to get out. Well, you're gonna have to wait. I'm recording this video. Okay. Space. Let's talk about what space I can get. So, you want to say hi? You want to make a cameo? She's going to make a cameo, you guys. Maybe. Come here. Come here. Okay. She's like, that's it, bitch. You're not paying me no coins. We're not having it. Alright, so, creating your space. I know, right? So, if you have the means and you want to, because some people need it. Some people need that whole ambiance. So, they got to, they got to go buy an apartment or rent a space somewhere else, and I get it, and that's fine. But ultimately, what you need to do is, no matter what your space is, you need to make sure that your space has everything you need to work with. So your laptop, um, you know, quick, immediate access to your library that you've built, um, and pen and paper. Because even though you're working on a computer, it's always great to have pen and paper on hand, because you can make little notes as you go along and not have to have 75 windows, which for me is distracting as fuck. Like after like the third or fourth window, I just fucking can't deal. I only need like 2 windows at a time. I just clicked on myself, you guys. Like, that's gross. Most unprofessional video ever, but you will love it, right? So, but yeah, when you create your space, make sure that your space is in an area in which you can like have access where it can be quiet. It can just be you and to focus. Make sure your space has a door, right? I've tried to do the writing thing where I would write downstairs at the dining room, and it was too distracting. It was distracting as fuck because not many people were running in and out of the back door, the front door, the side door. Um, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on the door. I mean, flying monkeys, whatever. Just too, but there's a circus. There's a 3-ring circus going downstairs at all times in my home, right? Over at good old 1218. There's always a fucking 3-ring circus going on. So with that being said, it's um, um, not beneficial for me to use downstairs as a writing space unless no one's home, it's in the middle of the day, and then I can sit at the table and kind of spread out a little bit more. So for me, my space is in my bedroom. Now, that can be kind of dangerous and problematic, because again, distraction is the key. So I've had to do things like I love background noise, but my background noise for me has to be like just music, and I have to turn the TV off, or at the very least mute it. And I find that I stay pretty focused and on task that way. So when you're creating your space, make sure that you have a space that is conducive for you working. Now, don't get me wrong. I will talk to this point on how to create a space wherever you go. Actually, I won't. I will save that for another video. We were talking about how to create a space, a creative space for you wherever you are. But and by that I mean more like on the go, like how to be like an actual effective writer at like places like Starbucks and not a fucking poser. Because I think we all know plenty of people that like, oh, I'm a writer, and they like have to go to Starbucks, and I think it's more about them just getting out the house and having a cup of coffee than it is about writing, because it's like, was you really writing? I know I don't write well at Starbucks. Now I do write well at like McDonald's, because I'm a fat kid. I like to eat. So I do well at Wendy's. I do well at like the pizza buffet. But I don't do so high at Starbucks. It's nothing but drinks and people having conversations that yeah, are lackluster. Now I say this much, I go there sometimes to fucking get a feel for conversations and dialogues, depending on what I'm writing and what I'm working on. Then Starbucks is a really great happening place for me to write, but otherwise it really is. It's more research. Which real quick, wrapping up space, and then I'll move on to the next tool that I find beneficial. Is that when you're creating your space, again, make sure it's a space that basically, in essence, that is basically conducive to a positive, healthy work environment for you. And honestly, only you know that, because there's some people that work really. I don't feel like there's something on my head. Word. By the way, right there. Okay. Anyway, sorry. I see distracted right there. Um, but no, like there, some people work really, really well in quiet settings. Like they have to have complete quiet so their mind is still, so that they're able to really focus and hone in. To me, I can write in a noisy background or a quiet background. I don't know if it's adaptability or whatever, but like I've been able to do that. But what I do find distracting, um, sometimes, is that it's distracting when it's people that I know that are making the noise. If it's strangers, I'm able to like tune them out. But like when it's like you live with three of your best friends, and like one comes in and goes, hey, what do you want to do for dinner? And then there's another one comes and says, hey, are you going to the party such such? And then there's another, hey, what, like that. That's where for me it gets problematic. So then I have to come upstairs, and also too. Sometimes I have to shut my dog out because she wants to be in and out and in and out and in and out. And I'm like, girl, ain't nobody got time for that. I'm trying to write this dialogue. So there's that. Um, One of the last points that I'm going to touch on of things that I find beneficial, and I'll probably do another video about other things that are beneficial, or will interject it in something, a talking point, and I'm sure these will be reiterated in some shape, form, or fashion. So if you feel like I just kind of rambled and didn't give you nothing, I am so sorry. That is not my intent. Um, but you knew that when you saw the first Jank video welcoming you to my channel, what you were signing up for. Okay? But the last thing that I find, that I'll share with you that I find beneficial is two things, two for one. One is that stay engaged in other forms of creativity. And by that I mean, for example, as a comic book or graphic novelist, not just watch comic book movies and television shows, but play video games. Even if you're not a gamer, I don't care. Play a video game. Believe it or not, playing video games allows you to, seeing how someone else's story unfolds helps you think about your own story and how you want it to unfold. And if there's a certain mechanism that you want to use in your story and you're not sure how that's going to work out, believe it or not, seeing just in a video game how that mechanic works in storytelling may help you better understand or realize that a particular mechanic or said mechanic may or may not work for your story. That's just it. That, and also too, like sometimes I found that just sitting down and zoning out playing a video game for several hours and not thinking about my book has helped me to, one, decompress, and two, has actually helped me come up with some really great plot points. Has helped me actually re-engage myself into the work and be able to sit down and go, okay, you know what, like, oh, or like sometimes I've been playing and all of a sudden, like, boom, like ideal, and I will pause game, right? I will write it down on my little notepad and then before, or sometimes like I've just paused the game or stopped the game and then gotten up and went immediately back to work. But you kind of need that break and levity. So look at, engage yourself in other forms of creativity and fun, and always stay engaged in fun activities. Get coloring books and color. Um, as a writer, for me, it's a de-stressor, and I find it's a great de-stressor. Have Play-Doh on hand. I have, I don't even know if I have it. Okay, I thought I had it close by, but I don't. So like there's these mini, move with me. I'm gonna try to see if I can find it. There are these little mini tubes of Play-Doh. I got a pillow, but a bitch don't have Play-Doh. That's cool. It's around here somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, hi guys. I've changed channels again. But no, like there's these little mini tubes of Play-Doh that you can get, and I keep it around because sometimes like shit is stressful, and I just need a minute to like calm the hell down. Because as you get into the creation process, what you will find is that there are points in times where you can't write. Like, you're sitting there and you're looking at a screen and a cursor just, it's just, excuse me, it's just, oh, did I look like I was gonna get sick? I wasn't, I promise. um there are times where you're sitting down and you're trying to write and you just, nothing's coming to you, and nothing's, there's no workflow, there's no nothing. And I've had plenty of days where it's not coming to me. It's not happening. It's not happening at all. um and so I just need a minute, and I start to get stressed. And so what I do is I sit down, I will color, I'll play with Play-Doh, and it just allows you to take your mind. They have those great coloring books now that are for adults, specifically for that. So yeah, so like, it allows you to like just disengage from what you're trying to do for a second, and it gives your brain a chance to to think and readjust and reprocess and reformat. Because sometimes you're writing and you're not able to come up with anything because you have other things on your mind and you don't realize that you do, but they're there. If you're worried about your mortgage payment, if you're worried about, Brittany's got to get fitted for braces, and John's got soccer practice tomorrow, and I'm supposed to pick up the twins and take them to the birthday party, and all this other stuff. If you have other things going on, sometimes that seeps into your mind, and so you have those flashes of thoughts, either consciously or subconsciously, and so you can't really focus and hone in. So there's that. Tasty. Orange Crush is the ish, right? So, make sure you have other outlet, and that you take breaks, and that you're able to do that. You're able to really kind of just disengage for a second from the project and allow yourself some time and space. So lastly, on this ridiculously long ass video, we're 27, 18, 19, we're at the almost 28-minute, the 30-minute video. Wow, y'all, I'm sorry. I'm gonna get my shit together and have pretty videos one day, be succinct and all cohesive and together, but not today, Satan. The last thing that I found beneficial, in my arsenal tools of writing, is that, and this goes back to building your research library, is that go out and actually research in the world. Sometimes, particularly in the writing process as you go along, if you're having trouble with like dialogue or figuring out how to a scene will play out, that's why I always tell people watch movies, right? Watch a lot of different genres of movies as well. But two, also go outside and like people watch. Like, go sit at the park and watch children play. Because that, as a writer, will help you understand how children play. Once you grow up, you have a memory of what you did, the activity, but not necessarily always like how you felt when you played, not necessarily how your body movements were. Like, you don't cognitively always recall that, right? So like, you got to remind yourself. So what you need to do is like go to the park and watch people interact, watch children play, watch old people interact, things like that. Also, go to places like Starbucks, which I find is really great. Ear hustle. Listen to people's conversations. Listen to how people have conversations. Listen to their tone and timbre. When, as uncomfortable as it is, if you are in a roommate situation and your roommate's arguing with their significant other, and it's like, and I don't mean go to their bedroom door and like and be ear hustling like that. But if you're downstairs in the living room and they're in the kitchen, they're having an argument, like, whatever you're doing, like, don't be nosy, right? But don't be nosy. And by be nosy, I mean, like, don't listen to like the particulars of their conversation, but listen to things like their tone. If they're arguing in front of you, like, even though it's uncomfortable as hell, like, observe that shit. Because believe me, you will, I'm sorry, Maury's doing the "is it your baby daddy" thing, and he just fell out on the floor. I'm sorry. That's fine. Moving right along. Sorry. See, distractions right there. Boom. Yeah. Next video, I'm gonna be at the desk. That's why I don't record from my bed hardly, cause that fucking TV. You know what? This little clap trap. Boom, right there. Okay. but study things like their body language. Study, listen to the inflection in their voice. Listen to things like that, because then as a writer, it will help you when you go to write dialogue. It will help you. Same thing if you're an artist creator, if you're an artist, writer, artist, however you want to put it. um again, like, study. Then you want to not only study the inflection of the voice and the semantics, but you want to study also their body language too, because then that'll help in your drawing process when you go to visually tell the story, because you're pulling double duty. You're not only telling a story that in just visual context, but you're also telling it in text. So you're doing both to maybe two, as opposed to two entities, working on. One person is writing the words, and then they give it to the artist, who will then visually bring it to life, and they've got to be able to link those tracks together, basically. So that's that. So with that said, this video was very long. I'm gonna go because I need to prep up. I got notes over here. There ain't no shame in my game. But I don't have my glasses on, so we're gonna see. So my next couple videos, I'm gonna talk about wow, I drew a blank. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna talk about actually sitting down and like creating the story, and talk really a little bit about my experience with just Titan in general, how you want to really think, some of the things you want to think about when you're sitting down to write your story. I'm also going to have some books that I'm going to show you guys that I have found helpful and beneficial to me in the creating the story process, things of that nature. Also coming up on the board, tips for success, like how to set yourself up so that you are successful with your writing. Also talking about finding your voice as a writer, character creation, and dialogue. So those are some of the fun things that will come up. Scripting, which we'll talk more about format and all that jazz, and all the other stuff. So I'm gonna go because the dog wants to get out. I've got to let her walk before she pees on the floor, which that'll be a travesty in and of itself. And I look a hot mess. I apologize. So yeah. So the next video, you'll probably see me in the same t-shirt, because I'm probably gonna record them all in one day. Okay, not all in one day. I'll probably record like one or two more, and then I'm done. So yeah, so there's that. So there you go. There are my that is my tools of the trade, my tools that I find beneficial. Some of the tools that I find anyway beneficial to creating your own comic book. So with that said, go out there and have fun and make good choices. And until next time, bye.